that had never known war. In all their long history, stretching back 50,000 years, they had never raised a weapon against another living being. They were gentle creatures. Their bodies were thin and tall, with skin that glowed softly in shades of blue and purple. They spent their lives making beautiful things. They created music that could make other species cry with joy. They grew crystals that powered the communication systems of 100 worlds. Their home planet Prime was a peaceful place. The skies were always painted in soft colors. The forests sang with the voices of harmless animals. They built their cities to blend with nature, not to fight against it. They believed that all intelligent beings were good at heart. They believed that understanding and kindness could solve any problem. They were wrong. The Or came without warning. Their ships appeared in space like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. The Or were insects, but not like any insect from a peaceful world. They stood 8 feet tall on 6 powerful legs. Their bodies were covered in black armor that grew from their own flesh. Their eyes saw only 2 things in the universe: food and enemies. They tried to talk to them. They sent messages of peace. They offered to share their knowledge, their art, their crystals. The Or did not answer with words. They answered with fire. The first colony fell in 3 days. The Or had no weapons, no soldiers, no way to fight back. The Or did not take prisoners. They did not make slaves. They harvested. That was their word for it. They took living beings and turned them into food for their endless swarm. 1,000,000 vanished into the belly of the hive ships. Ambassador watched the reports come in from her office on Prime. Each report was worse than the last. Colony after colony went dark. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were turned to ash in hours. The Or moved through space like a fire through dry grass. Was old for her kind, nearly 300 years. She had spent her whole life believing in peace. Now she watched her people die, and she felt something she had never felt before. She felt rage, but rage without power was useless. They had no army. They had no weapons. They had only words, and words meant nothing to the Or. She went to the Galactic Concord. This was the great alliance of civilized species, the organization that was supposed to keep peace in the galaxy. Surely they would help. Surely they would not let an entire species be eaten alive. The Concord building was beautiful. It floated in space, a massive station where representatives from 200 species met to discuss the future of the galaxy. Stood before them all, her skin flickering with fear and desperation. She showed them images of the destruction. She played recordings of children screaming as Or soldiers dragged them away. She begged for help. The representatives listened. They shook their heads sadly. They expressed their deep sympathy, and then they did nothing. "The laws of the Concord forbid us from interfering in regional conflicts," said the chairman, a fat creature from a world of plenty. "We are very sorry for your situation, but we cannot send military forces." "Regional conflict," his voice broke. "They are eating us. This is not a conflict, this is extinction." "The Or have not attacked any Concord member world," another representative said. "If we interfere, we might provoke them to attack us as well. We must think of our own people first." Looked around the great chamber. She saw hundreds of faces. Some looked sad. Some looked bored. None looked ready to fight. The civilized galaxy had decided that watching the die was better than risking their own comfort. She returned to Prime in despair. The Or were only weeks away now. Their scout ships had already been seen in the outer system. Soon the harvesting would begin here too. Soon her people would be nothing but food for monsters. That night sat alone in her office. She had tried everything. Every ally, every favor, every law. Nothing had worked. The civilized galaxy would let her people die. Then she remembered something, a story from years ago, a rumor really, about a planet called Earth. Earth was in the quarantine zone. This was a section of space that the Concord had sealed off and forbidden anyone from entering. The reason was simple. Earth was this meant it was a planet so dangerous, so violent, that no normal species could survive there. The stories about Earth were like horror tales. The planet had crushing gravity that made every step a struggle. The weather could kill you in 100 ways, from freezing cold to burning heat to storms that tore cities apart. The animals were monsters, all teeth and claws and hunger. And the dominant species, the humans, were the most terrifying of all. Humans had evolved on this nightmare world. They had fought every day of their existence just to survive. They had wars that killed millions of their own kind. They ate other animals. They could run for hours without stopping, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They healed from wounds that would kill other species. They felt pain but kept fighting anyway. The Conquered had contacted Earth when humans first developed space travel. They had taken one look at these creatures and decided they were too dangerous to be allowed into galactic society. The humans were given a choice: stay in your own space or be destroyed. The humans had agreed, but they had not been happy about it. Had always agreed with the quarantine. Humans sounded like monsters. No civilized being would want such creatures roaming free among the stars. But now, as she watched her world prepare for death, she thought about monsters. The Or were monsters too. Maybe it took a monster to fight a monster. She made her decision. She walked to the communication center and found the restricted frequency. The one that reached through the quarantine zone. The one that reached Earth. Her hands were shaking as she recorded her message. This is Ambassador of the people. We are dying. The Or are coming to harvest our world. The Galactic Conquered has abandoned us. We have no weapons, no soldiers, no hope. If anyone can hear this, please help us. Please, we are begging you. She sent the message into the void. Then she sat down and waited. She did not really expect an answer. The humans probably hated the galaxy that had locked them away. Why would they care about strangers who had never helped them? But deep in her heart, a small flame of hope remained alive. Maybe, just maybe, the monsters would come, and maybe they would not be what everyone expected. Far away, across the cold darkness of space, her signal reached a world of blue oceans and green continents. A world that had been told it was too dangerous to be free. A world whose people had been waiting for a reason to show the galaxy what they really were. The message arrived, and everything changed. Commander was drinking coffee when the message came through. She was sitting in her small office aboard the UES Prometheus, a warship that patrolled the edge of human space. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and distant. Inside, the ship hummed with the quiet sounds of machines and sleeping soldiers. Was 42 years old. Her hair was gray at the edges and her face carried the lines of hard years. She had fought in 3 wars on Earth before joining the space fleet. She had seen things that would break most people, but she kept going. That was what humans did. They kept going. Her communication officer knocked on her door. His face was pale. "Commander, you need to hear this," he said. "We picked up a signal on the restricted frequency." Frowned. The restricted frequency was the one that connected to the quarantine zone's border. It was never used. The galaxy had made it very clear that they wanted nothing to do with humanity. She followed her officer to the communication room. Other crew members were already gathered there, listening to a voice that filled the space with raw desperation. "This is Ambassador of the people. We are dying. The Or are coming to harvest our world. The Galactic Conquered has abandoned us. We have no weapons, no soldiers, no hope. If anyone can hear this, please help us. Please, we are begging you." The message repeated. Listened to it 3 times. Each time she felt something growing inside her chest. It was an old feeling, a feeling she knew well. Anger. She turned to her crew. "What do we know about the..." Lieutenant, her intelligence officer, pulled up records on his screen. "Peaceful species. No military. They make communication crystals that half the galaxy uses. The Or are an hive species. They consume other life forms for food. They've destroyed at least 17 civilizations that we know of. And the Conquered is doing nothing." The Conquered says it's a regional conflict. They won't interfere. Felt the anger grow hotter. She had read about the Galactic Conquered. These were the same beings who had looked at humanity and decided they were too dangerous to be free. They had called humans monsters. They had locked them away in a corner of the galaxy like animals in a cage. But now, when innocent people were being eaten alive, these civilized species sat in their comfortable chairs and did nothing. They were willing to watch an entire world die because helping might be inconvenient. Contact Earth Command said, Priority 1. 1 hour later, she was speaking with Admiral Wei. He was an old man with white hair and eyes that had seen too much. He was also the commander of Earth's entire space fleet. I've heard the message, the Admiral said. It's spreading across all human channels now. Everyone knows. Sir, we have to do something. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. You know what the Conquered will say. If we leave our quarantine zone, they might consider it an act of war. Sir, with respect, the Conquered can go to hell. His voice was hard. I didn't join the fleet to sit behind an invisible fence while children are dragged off to be eaten. We're supposed to be the monsters, right? Maybe it's time we showed them what monsters do when you hurt the innocent. The Admiral smiled. It was a cold smile, but there was warmth underneath it. I was hoping you would say that, Commander. I've already spoken with the United Earth Council. The vote was unanimous. We're going. We're going, every ship we can spare, every soldier who volunteers. He leaned forward. Commander, you picked up the signal first. You'll lead the advance force. Get there as fast as you can. We'll be right behind you. Felt her heart racing. This was it. After years of being caged, humanity was finally going to show the galaxy who they really were. Yes, sir, she said. We won't let you down. Within hours, the Prometheus was joined by 12 other warships. Word had spread through the fleet like fire. Soldiers who had been sleeping woke up and demanded to join. Engineers worked through the night to prepare ships for the journey. Pilots canceled their leave and reported for duty. No one ordered them to go. No one forced them. They chose this. Walked through her ship and saw her crew preparing for battle. She saw their faces, young and old, men and women from every nation on Earth. They were soldiers, but they were also human beings. They had families back home. They had things they loved, things they wanted to live for. And they were willing to die for strangers they had never met. She stopped to talk with Sergeant Cole, a big man with dark skin and hands that could crush stone. He was checking his weapons with careful attention. You ready for this, Sergeant? Asked. Looked up at her. Commander, I joined the military because I wanted to protect people. For years, they've had us sitting on our hands, guarding borders that nobody attacks. Now, for the first time, there are people who actually need protecting. He smiled, and it was a fierce smile. I've been ready for this my whole life. Nodded. She understood. They all understood. The fleet gathered at the edge of the quarantine zone. 50 ships had become 100. 100 had become 300. More were coming every hour. This was the largest human fleet ever assembled, and it had come together in less than a day. Stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and looked out at the gathered ships. Behind her, the crew waited in silence. Ahead of her, the stars beckoned. She opened a channel to all ships. Her voice was calm and clear. This is Commander. In a few minutes, we are going to cross into conquered space. We are going to break their laws. We are going to ignore their warnings. And we are going to save people who have no one else to save them. She paused, letting the words sink in. The galaxy thinks we are monsters. Maybe they're right. But I have learned something in my years of fighting. Sometimes when the darkness comes, you need monsters on your side. The call for help. We are going to answer. And when they see us coming, they are going to learn what happens when you make humanity angry. She took a deep breath. All ships engage jump drives. We're going to war. The stars stretched and twisted. Space itself seemed to bend around the human fleet. And then they were gone. racing across the galaxy toward a world they had never seen, to save people they had never met. Because that was what humans did. They heard a cry for help and they came. Behind them, the quarantine zone sat empty. The cage door was open, and the monsters were loose. Hive Admiral had served the swarm for 200 years. In that time, he had led the conquest of 9 worlds. He had watched entire civilizations fall beneath the claws of his warriors. He had seen billions of creatures processed into food for the never-ending hunger of the Or. He had never known fear. His species did not feel fear. They felt only hunger and duty. The hive must feed. The hive must grow. All other things were meaningless. When his sensors detected the approaching fleet, he felt nothing but mild curiosity. His scouts had reported on the quarantine zone. He knew about the primitive species called humans who lived there. Soft creatures, weak gravity dwellers from a small planet. Their technology was crude. Their numbers were few. They were not even worth harvesting. He commanded a fleet of 3,000 hive ships. Each ship carried 10,000 warriors, 30 million soldiers, all connected to the same hive mind, all moving with perfect coordination. He had crushed civilizations 10 times larger than the approaching human force. This would be over quickly. The human fleet dropped out of their strange, faster-than-light travel and immediately began moving toward his position. Studied their formations with all 6 of his eyes. Something was wrong. The humans were not behaving like other species. When civilized species faced the Or, they always did the same thing. They formed defensive lines. They tried to protect their worlds. They waited for the swarm to come to them, hopping to hold out long enough for help that never came. It was a strategy born of fear, and it always failed. The humans were not forming defensive lines. They were attacking. Their ships screamed forward at speeds that should have torn them apart. They flew in patterns that made no logical sense, constantly changing direction, never staying still, and they were heading straight for the heart of his fleet. Admiral, one of his subordinates, said through the hive link, "The humans are not slowing down. They will hit our forward ships in 2 minutes." "Let them come," replied. "They will break against us like water against stone." But somewhere deep in his mind, in a part that had never stirred before, something whispered a warning. Commander stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on her screens. 3,000 ships, 30 million soldiers. The numbers were insane. By any reasonable calculation, her fleet should turn and run. Smiled. Humans had never been very good at reasonable calculations. "All ships execute attack pattern Omega," she ordered. "Let's show these bugs how we say hello." The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups. Each group picked a target and dove toward it like hawks falling on prey. The Or ships tried to respond, but they were too slow. Their hive mind coordination was perfect, but perfection was also predictable. Human captains did not follow perfect patterns. They improvised. They adapted. They did things that made no sense until suddenly they made perfect sense. The Prometheus led a group of 10 ships directly into the center of the Or formation. They passed through a storm of enemy fire, taking hits that would have destroyed ships from other species. But human ships were built differently. They were built by people who expected to get hurt. They had backup systems for their backup systems. They kept fighting even when they were broken. Brought her ship alongside a massive hive carrier, so close that the 2 vessels were almost touching. The Or had never seen anyone do this. It was suicide. It was madness. It was exactly what wanted. "Fire everything," she ordered. The Prometheus unleashed its weapons at point-blank range. At this distance, nothing could miss. The hive carrier's armor, designed to stop attacks from far away, crumbled under the concentrated assault. Explosions tore through the enemy ship. Flames burst from 100 wounds. And then the boarding parties launched. The Or understood space combat. They understood fleet tactics. They did not understand what the humans were doing now. Small pods shot from the human ships and attached themselves to Or vessels. The pods burned through the alien armor, and then humans poured inside. Felt something new as reports flooded through the hive mind. His warriors were dying, not in the slow, grinding way of a normal battle, but fast, terribly fast. The humans moved through his ships like nothing he had ever seen. They were smaller than his warriors, weaker in many ways, but they did not fight like weak creatures. They fought like predators. They used weapons that fired metal at incredible speeds, punching through or armor like it was paper. They used explosives that filled corridors with fire. They used knives and clubs when their weapons failed. And when they had nothing left, they used their own bodies, tackling or warriors and fighting with hands and teeth. Sergeant Cole led a squad through the corridors of a hive ship. The walls were made of something organic, something that pulsed and breathed. The air smelled like rotting meat. Everywhere, or warriors rushed to stop them. Did not slow down. He had trained his whole life for moments like this. On Earth, humans had hunted animals 10 times their size. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that burned whole continents. They had climbed out of the mud again and again, refusing to die no matter what the universe threw at them. A warrior lunged at him, claws raised for a killing blow, ducked under the attack and drove his knife into the joint between the creature's head and body. The alien screamed, a high-pitched sound that hurt human ears, twisted the knife and pulled it free. The warrior fell. Another took its place, and another kept fighting. "These things just don't stop coming," one of his soldiers said. "Neither do we," replied. "Keep moving, we've got a reactor to destroy." Across the battle, the same scenes repeated. Human soldiers boarding enemy ships, human pilots flying impossible maneuvers, human ships taking damage that should have destroyed them and continuing to fight anyway. Watched his fleet crumble. 100 ships destroyed, 200, 300. The humans were not just winning, they were tearing his forces apart. And finally, for the first time in 200 years, the Hive Admiral felt something cold spread through his mind. Fear. He understood now why the galaxy had locked these creatures away. He understood why they were called monsters. The humans did not fight like civilized beings. They fought like they had nothing to lose. They fought like every battle was their last. They fought with a fury that seemed to burn from inside them like a star. He gave an order he had never given before. "All ships retreat." The Or fled. 3,000 ships had become 2,000, then 1,000. The survivors scattered, running from the small human fleet as fast as their engines could carry them. Commander watched them go. Her ship was damaged, her crew was exhausted, they had lost friends today. But they had won. She opened a channel to her fleet. "All ships, the enemy is in retreat. Pursue and destroy any ship that turns to fight. The rest of you form up on me. We have a planet to save." The human fleet gathered itself and turned toward Prime. Behind them, the wreckage of Or ships drifted in the darkness, a graveyard of creatures who had learned too late what happened when you threatened the innocent. The monsters were coming to help, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them. Prime was burning. From space, the planet still looked beautiful with its soft colors and gentle clouds. But on the surface, cities that had stood for 10,000 years were being torn apart. The Or had begun their harvest. Ambassador hid in an underground shelter beneath the capital city. Around her, thousands of pressed together in the darkness. They could hear the sounds above, the screams and crashes and terrible clicking noises of Or soldiers moving through the streets. They could smell the smoke that crept down through the vents. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. They had sent their message into the void and no answer had come. The conquered had abandoned them. The galaxy had forgotten them. Soon, the Or would find this shelter and it would all be over. Closed her eyes and thought about her people. All the art they had created. All the music they had made. All the children who would never grow up to see the stars. It would all be gone, and the universe would continue as if they had never existed. Then she heard something new, a sound from far above, a roar that shook the ground beneath her feet. She opened her eyes. Sergeant Cole hit the ground hard. His drop pod had come down in the middle of a city square, surrounded by burning buildings. He was on his feet before the pod's door finished opening, his rifle up and ready. Around him, other pods slammed into the earth. Human soldiers poured out of them, spreading across the square in seconds. The Or in the area turned to face this new threat, their clicking voices rising in surprise and anger. Did not give them time to organize. He raised his rifle and started shooting. The battle for Prime had begun. Across the planet, human forces landed in hundreds of locations. They came down in the cities and the forests and the mountains. They came wherever the Or had gathered, wherever they were being taken, wherever the screaming was loudest. They came to fight. Led his squad through the streets of the capital. The city had been beautiful once. Now it was a nightmare. Buildings lay in ruins. The ground was covered in debris, and everywhere the Or moved, dragging toward the massive harvesting ships that waited at the city's edge. There, one of his soldiers shouted, pointing toward a large structure that pulsed with alien energy. Harvesting facility. Looked at the building. It was surrounded by Or guards, dozens of them. Getting through would be hard. Getting out would be harder. He did not hesitate. Move, he ordered. Fast and hard, save as many as we can. They ran toward the building, firing as they went. The Or turned to meet them, claws raised and mouths open in battle screams. The two forces crashed together in a storm of violence. Fought like he had never fought before. He shot one warrior, ducked under another's attack, and drove his knife into a third. A claw raked across his armor, tearing through the metal and cutting the flesh beneath. He ignored the pain. Pain could wait. The mission could not. He reached the door of the harvesting facility and kicked it open. Inside he found horror. Hundreds of were held in cages. Many of them were children, their soft glow dimmed by fear and despair. Or workers moved between the cages, selecting victims and dragging them toward machines that did not want to understand. The workers turned to face him. They were not warriors, but they were still dangerous. They hissed and clicked, raising tools that could cut through bone. Raised his rifle, get away from them. The workers did not move. Pulled the trigger. Minutes later, his squad had secured the building. The Or inside were dead. The machines were destroyed, and stood before the cages, looking at the children who stared back at him with wide, terrified eyes. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and opened the first cage. The child inside flinched away from him, understood. To this little one he was just another monster, a different shape but still something to fear. He knelt down, making himself smaller. He pulled off his helmet so the child could see his face. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now, we're here to help." The child did not understand his words, but something in his voice, something in his eyes got through. Slowly, very slowly, the child reached out and touched his hand. Picked the child up and held them gently. "Let's get you out of here." Across the city, across the planet, the same scenes played out. Human soldiers breaking into facilities. Human doctors treating wounds. Human hands lifting out of cages and carrying them to safety. The Or fought back. They fought hard, but they were facing something they had never encountered before. They were facing creatures who would not stop, who would not retreat, who would die before letting one more innocent person be taken. Ambassador emerged from her shelter to find the world changed. The sounds of battle still echoed in the distance, but the clicking voices of the Or were fading. In their place, she heard something else. Voices speaking a language she did not know, human voices. She walked through the ruined streets until she found them. A group of human soldiers stood in a small square, surrounded by survivors. A human woman in medical clothing was treating a wounded, her hands moving quickly and carefully. The woman's uniform was covered in blood. Some of it was purple blood. Some of it was red, her own. She had been hurt, but she had not stopped working. She had not even slowed down. Watched her for a long moment, then she stepped forward. "Why?" she asked. The woman looked up. Her face was tired beyond words. Her eyes held shadows that would probably never leave. But underneath all of that saw something else, something warm. "Why what?" the woman asked. "Why did you come?" His voice trembled. "We are nothing to you. We are strangers from the other side of the galaxy. Your people owe us nothing. The Conquered told you to stay away. Why would you risk everything for us?" The woman smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad but real. "Because you asked." She turned back to her patient. "You sent a message. You said you needed help. That's all we needed to hear." Felt tears forming in her eyes. Did not cry often, but this moment deserved tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." The woman nodded without looking up. "Don't thank us yet. The battle's not over, but I promise you this. We're not leaving until every last one of your people is safe. That's what humans do. We protect the ones who can't protect themselves." Above them, the sky began to clear. The smoke was fading. The Orc ships were retreating, fleeing into space as more human warships arrived. For the first time in weeks, the sun touched the surface of Prime, and in that warm light they began to hope again. The monsters had come, but they had come to save, not to destroy. Maybe thought the galaxy had been wrong about them all along. The Orc ran. For the first time in their long and bloody history, they fled from prey. Their ships scattered across space like insects escaping a fire, racing back toward their home systems with whatever forces remained. They thought they were safe. They thought the humans would be satisfied with one victory. They thought the monsters would return to their cage and leave the Orc to rebuild and grow strong again. They were wrong. Admiral Wei stood on the bridge of the flagship Terra's Fury. Around him, the largest human fleet ever assembled moved through space in perfect formation. 5,000 warships, 2 million soldiers, everything humanity could gather from every corner of their small territory. The old admiral looked out at the stars ahead. Somewhere in that direction lay the heart of the swarm, the place where the queens bred new warriors and made plans to devour the galaxy. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we're receiving transmissions from the Galactic Conquered. They're demanding we return to the quarantine zone immediately." Wei did not even bother to respond. The Conquered had made their choice when they refused to help They had made their choice when they locked humanity away because they were afraid of what humans might do. They did not get to make demands now. "Ignore them," he said. "Continue pursuit." The fleet followed the trail of fleeing Orc ships. They found the enemy at a staging world, a dead planet that the swarm used as a gathering point. Thousands of Orc ships hung in orbit, trying to reorganize after their defeat. The humans did not give them time. The battle was short and brutal. The Orc were disorganized, frightened, unable to coordinate properly. The humans cut through them like a blade through cloth. Ships exploded. Warriors died. The staging world burned. And still the humans did not stop. They pursued the survivors to the next system, and the next. Every Orc base they found, they destroyed. Every harvesting fleet they encountered, they eliminated. They broadcast their message on all frequencies, making sure every species in the galaxy could hear. "You came for the innocent, now we come for you." The Galactic Conquered watched in horror. They had always feared humans as uncontrollable savages, as monsters who would destroy everything they touched. Now they saw those fears coming true. The humans were not just defending they were hunting the Orc to extinction. Ambassador traveled with the human fleet. Commander had invited her, saying that they deserved to see justice done. Had accepted, though she was not sure what she would feel when the moment came. She found out when they reached the planet was massive, covered in hive structures that stretched from pole to pole. Billions of or lived there, along with the queens who controlled the entire swarm. From this world, the Order had gone out to harvest the. From this world, 17 civilizations had been sentenced to death. The human fleet surrounded the planet. Every weapon was armed. Every soldier was ready. And then something unexpected happened. A transmission came from the planet's surface. It was one of the queens, speaking through a translator. Her voice was high and strange, filled with emotions that had never heard from or before. "Please," the queen said, "please stop. We surrender, we will give you anything, territory, resources. We will never attack another world, just please do not destroy us." Admiral Wei listened to the message. His face showed nothing. He thought about what he had seen on Prime. The cages full of children, the harvesting machines, the bodies of who had been processed for food before the humans arrived. He thought about the 17 species who would never make such a plea because there was no one left to speak for them. "Mercy," he said slowly, "is for those who show it." He gave the order. The fleet opened fire. The bombardment lasted for 3 days. When it was over, the Or was silent. The hive structures were rubble. The queens were dead. The swarm was broken, not destroyed entirely, but reduced to scattered groups who would never again threaten the galaxy. Watched it all. She thought she would feel satisfaction or perhaps horror at the destruction. Instead, she felt something else, something complicated. The humans had done a terrible thing. They had killed billions of living beings. But those beings had been killers themselves. They had shown no mercy to the 17 species they consumed. They had shown no mercy to the. Perhaps there was a justice in ending them this way. Or perhaps not, was not sure. She doubted she would ever be sure. Commander found her standing at a window, staring at the ruined planet below. Having second thoughts, asked. Was quiet for a moment. "I am thinking about what you are. The galaxy called you monsters. They locked you away because they were afraid of what you might do. And now I think they were right to be afraid, but I also think they were wrong about what kind of monsters you are." She turned to face the human. "You do not kill for pleasure. You do not destroy for gain. You kill to protect. You destroy those who harm the innocent." Nodded slowly. "We're not good people. I know that. We've done terrible things in our history to each other and to our world, but we've also learned something from all that pain. We've learned that you have to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, even if it means doing terrible things to make it happen." The fleet turned away from the dead world and began the long journey home. They stopped at Prime on the way to check on the survivors and deliver supplies. Stood with Admiral Wei as they watched human doctors helping patients, human engineers rebuilding damaged structures, human soldiers playing with children. "What happens now?" asked. The Admiral smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a man who had done hard things and would have to live with them. "Now we go home. The conquered will probably scream at us for a while. They'll make threats they can't back up, but they won't attack us. They've seen what we do to people who threaten the innocent. And if someone else calls for help, another species like my people." The Admiral looked at her with old, wise eyes. "Then we'll come again. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. The galaxy didn't lock us away because we're dangerous. They locked us away because deep down, they know we're the ones who will fight when no one else will." He turned and walked away, leaving alone with her thoughts. She stood there for a long time, watching the humans work. These strange creatures from their deadly world. These monsters who had crossed a galaxy to save strangers. These protectors who carried the wrath of 1,000 suns but used it to shield the weak. The had called for aid, the had answered. And the galaxy would never be the same.